A patrol car idles on an East London estate. Masked men close in, phones up. On video, the officers stay inside as the crowd jeers. The clip spreads within hours. It's not a stunt, it's a real incident the gang wants seen. The officers sit trapped, humiliated, while the footage spreads online like wildfire. This was no staged movie scene. It was filmed on an East London estate, a real-life taunt that announced Albanian syndicates had arrived, and they were unafraid to broadcast their defiance. In other clips, the same gangsters brandish AK-47 rifles, Kalash as they call them, boasting they are ready for war against anyone who dares to challenge their turf. These are not the shadows of the underworld hiding quietly. These are men who once arrived as refugees, now flaunting power, wealth and violence in the open. They humiliated London's police not only with spectacle, but by outsmarting investigations, slipping past raids, outgunning rivals, and tightening their grip on Britain's multi-billion-pound narcotics empire. This is the story of how newcomers from the Balkans transformed into Britain's kings of cocaine. A decades-long saga of crime, conflict and audacity. Bloody street feuds, escapes that embarrassed the authorities, and clever maneuvers that left investigators one step behind. The question is not just how they rose so quickly, but how the guardians of London allowed themselves to be mocked, outmaneuvered and made into unwilling actors in a gang's performance. The viral taunts in London were shocking, but their roots stretched back to the 1990s when European investigators began whispering about a new force rising from the Balkans. In 1999, Britain's National Criminal Intelligence Service issued a stark warning. Heavily armed Albanian gangs had set their sights on the UK. The alarm was not unfounded. Across continental Europe, Albanians had already left a trail of fear. In Milan, they fought Italian mob families head-on and forced them out of parts of the city. An astonishing feat in a place long ruled by the Cosa Nostra. German, Swiss and Greek police reported the same pattern. Young, well-armed Albanians arriving as asylum seekers, then revealing themselves as syndicates, seizing territory with violence and speed. Behind the facade of refugees, many carried a far darker mission. Ian Morrison of the NCIS warned that ethnic Albanians posing as asylum seekers were in fact criminals positioning themselves to set up shop in Britain. They already dominated people smuggling routes into Western Europe and had pushed into the heroin market once monopolized by Turkish mafias. Like their Sicilian counterparts, they bound their clans with besa, an oath of loyalty that once broken could only be repaid with blood. By the end of the decade, European authorities described them as the fastest-growing organized crime network on the continent. For London police, it was only a matter of time before the storm reached their streets. And sure enough, at the turn of the millennium, the first signs surfaced. A leaked MI6 report described Albanian syndicates as a new power in narcotics and sex trafficking, already tied to the chaos of post-communist Kosovo. They did not wait long to prove it. By the early 2000s, police estimated that Albanians controlled more than 3/4 of London's brothels after forcing out rivals with calculated violence. Their fronts were respectable enough: restaurants, bars, clubs, but behind them a vice empire expanded in silence, fueled by phantom charities siphoning cash through fake donation receipts. Then came the audacity that revealed how high these new players were willing to aim. In February 2006, Jetmir Papa, an Albanian criminal, played a central role in the largest cash robbery in British history. The £53 million Securitas depot heist. Employees were bound, a manager's family was kidnapped at gunpoint, and the money vanished. At trial, Books Papa laughed and shook hands as if it were all a game. More than half the cash was never recovered, and several conspirators slipped away. It was a warning shot on British soil. The Albanians operated far beyond the level of a street gang, functioning as a syndicate prepared to strike at the highest targets, and often succeeding. As the new century began, Albanian syndicates did not storm Britain with open violence. They slipped in quietly, embedding themselves as middlemen and enforcers for existing gangs. It was a high-profit margin strategy. In the criminal economy, they built a reputation for being sophisticated, professional, and, most dangerously, always delivering on their promises. Their edge lay in a combination of charm and ruthlessness. Many had grown up amid the Kosovo conflict or served in militias, carrying themselves with the hardened swagger of men who had already survived war. They lived by the Kanun, an unforgiving code that demanded vengeance, blood for blood. To allies this made them dependable. To rivals it made them terrifying. Italian Mafia clans recognized something familiar in these new arrivals. As crime expert Anna Sergei observed, criminals tend to trust those who mirror their own ways. And so the Ndrangheta, masters of Europe's coke routes, began treating Albanian crews as equals rather than subordinates. Together they forged pacts that spanned continents. Italian mobsters provided direct access to Latin American suppliers, while Albanians shouldered the most dangerous task, moving consignments through Europe's ports. Prosecutors later revealed how permanent groups of Albanians embedded themselves in harbours and docks, streamlining shipments of contraband for their Italian partners. They were good at moving things, so good that the Italians outsourced the job entirely. Soon, vast loads of narcotics were slipping into Britain through Belgium and the Netherlands, aided by port workers already on the Albanian payroll. The National Crime Agency would later confirm that Rotterdam and Antwerp, two of Europe's most critical gateways, had been infiltrated. From there, tons of contraband flowed to the Thames estuary and onto English shores, ferried by shell companies hiring ghost crews paid in cash to sail under flags of convenience. Controlled substances may have been the crown jewel, but it was not the only market under their grasp. In Scotland, officials warned that Albanians had muscled into the cannabis trade and even the illegal arms market, laundering profits through forged mortgage applications that allowed them to flip properties undetected. In London's red light districts, they emerged as vice kings. Figures like Luan Plakici trafficked dozens of Eastern European women, openly boasting that women are just goods. His empire of brothels earned millions until a 2003 conviction handed him 23 years in prison. The message was unmistakable. Whether narcotics, weapons, or human lives, Albanian syndicates were embedding themselves across Britain's darkest markets. And by the late 2000s, a new generation of traffickers arrived. Young, ambitious, many from northern Albania or Kosovo, ready to revolutionize Britain's coke trade with a business model unlike anything seen before. By the end of the 2000s, the Albanians were ready to move beyond being trusted partners. Around 2008, they launched a strategy that would upend Britain's coke market. Until then, the supply chain was layered and expensive. South American cartels sold bulk consignments to Dutch and Spanish wholesalers, who then passed it along to British gangs at steep markups. The Albanians cut out everyone. Emissaries from the Mafia Skiptari flew directly to Colombia, sat down with cartel producers, and struck deals face to face, leveraging the ties they had forged through their Italian allies. Entire shipments measured in tons were sent straight into Europe, sometimes even directly into Britain, disguised through double-booked manifests where the same container was logged as carrying both furniture and fruit. The results were staggering. Investigators discovered Albanians were buying consignments for as little as £4,000 to £5,500 a kilo. Rival gangs, still stuck with middlemen, were paying more than 4 times that, around £22,500. With that advantage, the Albanians flooded Britain with cheaper, purer product. They deliberately slashed prices, but never compromised quality. As one analyst observed, they did not have to be greedy to dominate the market. The effect rippled across the country. Dealers had no choice but to buy from Albanian importers. Any other supply was overpriced or diluted. Street prices dropped to the lowest levels in decades. Purity surged, and Britain's appetite grew dangerously. Soon, the UK had the highest number of young coke users in Europe, feeding a £6 billion annual habit, an empire increasingly under Albanian control. Observers could only marvel at the efficiency. One researcher quipped that if this business model were pitched on Dragon's Den, every investor would back it. It was the sell cheap, sell more strategy applied to contraband. And it worked. By 2017, even the National Crime Agency admitted the scale of what had happened. Deputy Director Matthew Horn warned that Albanian syndicates, though small in number, wielded significant control of the coke trade. London remained their hub, but their networks stretched across the country, pulling in tens of thousands of pounds week after week. This dominance was not maintained by business alone. The shadow of violence loomed behind every deal. British authorities noted their readiness to use extreme brutality and even feared that bystanders could be caught in confrontations. It was a reputation forged in the Balkans. Men who had grown up with blood feuds and war, carrying themselves with a swagger that said, "We have seen worse, do not test us." Other criminal groups took note. From yardies in London to Irish crews, many decided it was safer to work with the Albanians than against them. Reports praised their ability to forge alliances rather than ignite cartel wars, and yet the message was clear: cross them, and the consequences would be lethal. By the late 2010s, almost everywhere in England was selling Albanian-sourced coke. Liverpool was the lone exception, guarded fiercely by local gangs with their own South American ties. Everywhere else, the Albanians had cornered the market. A perfect storm had formed. They sourced narcotics more efficiently than anyone else, partnered with the most powerful traffickers, and enforced their dominance with a credible threat of violence. Britain now faced a new class of kingpins, one step ahead of the authorities at every turn, and from their rise would emerge a new breed of street soldiers ready to push the defiance even further. By the mid-2010s, the Albanian presence in Britain no longer hid in the shadows. What had begun as discreet syndicates grew into brazen street armies, flaunting their power in full view of the authorities. At the centre of this transformation stood Helbanianz, a gang born on the Gascoigne estate in Barking. The Gascoigne had long been scarred by narcotics. In the 1990s, it was ruled by local thugs, then by a Jamaican yardie crew that ran a 24-hour crack coke operation. When their leader was jailed in 2004, a power vacuum opened just as waves of young Albanians, many refugees from Kosovo, settled on the estate. By 2011, Albanian was the second most spoken language there. Out of this environment, a group of teenagers first posing as a hip-hop act hardened into a gang. They christened themselves Helbanianz and declared their creed. "We are the lords of the streets." The claim was not empty. By 2011, they had seized Barking's narcotics trade, operating openly on the estate. Their fortress was Rookwood House, a 12-story tower with choke points and linked walkways, perfect for holding off rivals or the police. One music video even shows them on its rooftop, gazing west to the London skyline and east toward the ports where their consignments arrived. Investigators described them as the street-level enforcers of the broader Albanian Mafia. Unlike the old dons who prized silence, Helbanianz embraced spectacle. They turned trap and drill music into propaganda. producing slick videos that doubled as recruitment drives. By 2018, their YouTube views ran into the millions, and their Instagram following reached 115,000 before takedown. The images were calculated. Wheel-spinning Bentleys, stacks of £50 notes, Rolex watches, and women draped across the scene. A tableau of illicit triumph designed to lure what they called new falcons into the gang. They also displayed their weapons without hesitation. In the notorious 2018 video Hood Life, they rapped about defending their block with Kalash rifles and threatened a rival Albanian faction known as OTR. The video's opening was unforgettable. A drone shot of masked gangsters encircling a Metropolitan Police patrol car on the estate, laughing and posing as officers sat powerless inside. The humiliation was filmed, edited, and broadcast to the world. Today that clip has all but vanished, reportedly pulled from the internet. But the damage was already done. The image of London's police boxed in by a street gang is burned into memory, no matter how hard it is to erase the evidence. The OTR feud was not merely lyrical. On the 17th of February 2011, Kosovo's Independence Day, Hellbanianz and OTR turned Trafalgar Square into a battlefield. Tourists mistook it for a flash mob until knives, machetes, and hockey sticks came out. For 90 minutes, central London descended into chaos. 3 teenagers were stabbed, and panicked crowds scattered as dozens of police rushed in. 19 youths, one only 13, were arrested. The press called it the Battle of Trafalgar Square. It was a national spectacle. Albanian gangs had turned one of Britain's proudest landmarks into their arena, and the Met stood embarrassed in the aftermath. Despite police pledges that such violence would not be tolerated, Helbanianz only expanded. They pushed OTR aside, grew their market across London, and earned the nickname the Stabbers for random knife attacks that terrorized Barking residents. Their swagger was embodied in men like Tristan Aslani, who in 2016 led police on a high-speed chase through North London, crashed into a shop, and was found with a suitcase of illegal substances, 21 more kilos at his flat, and a Scorpion machine pistol. His recklessness was their style. Wealth, weaponry, and defiance rolled into one. Their image of bling and bravado began to grate on older Albanian crime bosses. Traditional traffickers despised the exposure. One community elder admitted, "This goes against our culture. The big dealers want to be low-key, making profits without being caught." But Helbanianz thrived on publicity. Tabloids branded them Instagram gangsters, splashing photos of luxury cars and gold-plated guns across their pages. What veteran dons saw as dangerous exposure, younger recruits saw as legend. Authorities, however, were watching. By the late 2010s, Helbanianz members faced heavy sentences. In 2020, 3 were convicted of armed robbery and given a combined 15 years. A greater blow followed in 2022 when Ervin Salita, alias Vince, the gang's charismatic leader, was arrested in Albania after attempting to shoot a hotel owner. With Salita in prison and Rookwood House demolished in a council regeneration project, their Barking stronghold was erased. For London police, it looked like a turning point. The gang's fortress gone, its leader jailed, and its members scattered. Yet appearances can deceive. Helbanian's hierarchy had already planned an escape, shifting their empire abroad just as the Met thought it had struck a fatal blow. Once again, the police would find themselves outmaneuvered. When London's officers thought the tide had finally turned against Helbanianz, the gang unveiled another trick. In mid-2023, investigators learned, too late, that the leadership had slipped away. Ervin, Vince Salita, released early from his Albanian prison stint, did not stay long enough to be rearrested. After a brief return to Britain, he and at least 5 trusted lieutenants quickly relocated to Dubai. They're beyond extradition, as the UK-UAE extradition treaty is not always enforced. By the time the Met realized, the gang's kingpins were already living like royalty, transferring profits abroad via mirror trades in offshore banks that erased the money trail within hours. Videos appeared online, Rolls-Royce cars spinning through the desert, rooftop dinners by the Burj Khalifa, and Salita himself front and centre on a dune buggy, brandishing heavy firearms while his masked associates posed beside him. Hashtags like Dubai settings and Arab lifestyle accompanied the clips, set to pounding Albanian rap. What looked like bragging was in truth a deliberate taunt. These posts mocked British police, showing wanted men celebrating their freedom abroad. For the gang's young followers, they became digital propaganda, proof that Helbanianz was untouchable. The response was immediate. Their TikTok and Instagram accounts gained large audiences of young Albanians who now saw Salita and his crew as folk heroes, living a Gatsby-like fantasy far from London's cells. For the Met, it was a bitter humiliation. As one insider admitted, Vince and his closest associates are living in luxury while their soldiers are in British prisons. The rank and file absorbed the crackdown at home, while the leadership had extracted themselves and their profits to a safe haven. This pattern was not new. Albanians had long shown talent for vanishing when pressure mounted. In 2019, Jugat Meritsia carried out a brutal assassination in Hartlepool, then immediately fled the UK using the same networks that smuggle migrants. He was eventually caught in Belgium under a false identity, but only after an international chase. Dozens of other fugitives have escaped the same way, some using corrupted registrars to issue genuine-looking but entirely fabricated passports. By 2023, people smuggling crews were openly advertising emergency exits on TikTok for £2,500, a hiding place in a lorry, fake papers, and a path out of Britain. Police admitted at least 38 Albanian fugitives, including killers and traffickers, were still at large. Many thought to have used these routes. And even when arrests succeed, the gangs find ways to blunt the impact. In a 2025 exposé, an imprisoned Albanian trafficker explained why Britain's police will never defeat them. He described the sell the job trick. If a key member is arrested, associates move fast to secure his phone. That phone, full of contacts, clients and suppliers, is then sold to the next crew for up to £100,000. The business continues uninterrupted, simply under new management. From the police perspective, cutting off one head only produces another. Just one case revealed how fragile the balance can be. In 2022, officers launched Operation Wildflower against the Haziri brothers, who ran the Eddy line between London and Derbyshire. During the raids, their associate Alban Krasniqi hurled the gang's iPhone out of a window to stop it from being seized. A police dog miraculously found it in a nearby garden. Even then, the phone was locked. Detectives resorted to CCTV footage from a shop to capture Krasniqi entering his passcode while paying by phone. The unlocked device yielded a treasure trove of orders and contacts, evidence that secured over 70 years of combined sentences for the group. It was a rare victory, yet it proved the gangsters' boast correct. Had the phone vanished, the business could have been sold on, revived elsewhere, and the police left humiliated once again. From the rooftops of Dubai to the hidden compartments of lorries, Helbanianz and their allies demonstrated a ruthless ability to outwit and embarrass their pursuers. For London's police, every success seemed matched by a humiliation, while the syndicate continued to adapt, regroup, and taunt them from afar. For all their calculated partnerships, violence was never far from the surface. When it erupted, it was not subtle. It was brutal, public and brazen. Each eruption reminded London's police that no matter how carefully they watched, Albanian syndicates could still strike with shocking force. On Christmas Eve 2019, one such reminder came in Battersea. Flamur Beqiri, a 36-year-old Swedish national of Albanian origin, had moved to London with his wife and young child, hoping perhaps for quiet. Instead, as he returned home that night, a masked hitman was waiting. Beqiri was gunned down at close range on his doorstep, collapsing in a pool of blood before the eyes of his horrified family. The assassin vanished into the dark streets, leaving behind a scene that looked torn from Narcos. The case rattled the capital, an execution-style killing in an upscale neighborhood carried out with military precision right under the nose of the Met. A suspect was later arrested in Denmark, and investigators tied the attack to organized crime feuds stretching back to Sweden. But the message was already delivered. Albanian vendettas were not confined to the Balkans. They had spilled onto London's pavements, and police had once again been left reacting after the fact. The deeper challenge was cultural. Many young Albanians who came to Britain in the 2000s carried with them the legacy of blood law. In Albania, clan feuds had already claimed hundreds of lives through cycles of revenge. Those vendettas did not simply vanish when families fled. They followed, resurfacing in the UK in the form of targeted shootings and stabbings. For the Met, this was a fight they were ill-equipped to contain. These were not disputes over money alone, but codes of honour where only blood could settle the account. What made the syndicates more dangerous still was their restraint. They did not indulge in chaos for its own sake. Instead, they applied violence like a scalpel. Precise, sudden, and devastating. Enough to ensure obedience and cooperation in the narcotics trade. It left London's police facing an adversary that could vanish into silence when convenient, yet erupt with terrifying spectacle when challenged. It was this balance, low profile in peace, shockingly high profile in war, that kept the authorities humiliated. Every act of bloodshed carried a message. Control rested with the Albanians, deciding when and where the city would bleed, while the police were left scrambling in their wake. So, how have London's police and UK agencies responded to this takeover of the underworld? The record is mixed. There have been high-profile victories, large seizures, multi-country raids and lengthy sentences. But each success often feels fleeting as new traffickers rise or fugitives slip away. The National Crime Agency, NCA, has long listed Albanian organised crime as a top threat. Its reports warned that criminals from the Western Balkans had secured a major influence in the UK's underworld. By 2023, Britain was consuming 117 tons of coke a year, the largest market in Europe, a market Albanian networks had embedded themselves in. As NCA Drug Threat Director Charles Yates admitted, Britain had become the ideal location for traffickers, with Albanian groups firmly inside the supply chain. International operations have tried to hit them at the source, but syndicates relied on empty box shipments, containers filled with worthless cargo sent as decoys to exhaust police resources. In Ecuador, investigators discovered Albanian mafiosi using front companies in the banana trade to smuggle coke in shipping containers protected by bribed port inspectors who stamped containers without ever opening them. One alleged boss, Dritan Jika, invested in fruit firms as cover for multi-ton shipments. Many associates were caught in 2021 raids, but Jika remains at large. These cases underline the global fight. British intelligence must coordinate with Europe and Latin America to disrupt the pipeline Albanians built. Inside the UK, police have scored wins too. Operations like Eternal and Hazard dismantled Albanian-led networks in London, Manchester and Birmingham. Greater Manchester Police's Operation Challenger in 2021 exposed cannabis farms and launderers, seizing over £1 million in assets. Derbyshire's Operation Wildflower in 2022 caught the Haziri brothers and their crew. A bust so clean the police released bodycam footage showing doors smashed in and suspects cornered. Money has become a new battleground. In 2022, Britain struck a deal with Albania's SPAK anti-corruption task force to trace and seize illicit assets. Over £8 million was pledged for prisoner transfers, as Albanians grew to 10.6% of all foreign nationals in English and Welsh prisons, the largest group by nationality, a steep climb from 1.5% just 15 years earlier. Some in the government even floated sanctions and travel bans on known Albanian crime figures. Yet demand remains the problem. Britain has one of the highest coke consumption rates in the world. Prosecutors fighting Albanian cartels abroad bluntly say the onus is on consumer countries like the UK to curb demand, or gangs will keep coming. Meanwhile, the Met must battle not only the gangs but also public humiliation. Every Instagram clip of a gangster in a gold Lamborghini, every tabloid story of an escape chips away at its credibility. In hotspots like Barking, they launched days of action, flooding neighbourhoods with officers, but resources thin quickly and gangs vanish at the first sign of pressure. Intelligence breakthroughs have helped. The takedown of EncroChat in 2020 and analysis of Sky ECC in 2024 exposed encrypted networks used by Albanian traffickers. Europol raids in 2025 seized luxury villas and cars in Albania itself, but by the time evidence accumulates, the ringleaders are often long gone, living in coastal mansions in Albania or penthouses in Dubai. Hundreds have been prosecuted since 2005, and by 2022, nearly 1,100 Albanians were in UK prisons, including Balkan bosses who helped flood the streets with contraband. Yet replacements keep arriving. Poverty in Albania and the lure of fast cash provide a steady pipeline of recruits. Many move through fabricated student visa programs run by crooked agents. The small boats crisis of 2021 to 2022 added another dimension, with organised gangs piggybacking on migrant flows to move muscle across the Channel. For London's police, it has become a relentless game of whack-a-mole. Every arrest, every raid, every headline victory is answered by another cell rising, another fugitive escaping, another video mocking their authority. In barely 2 decades, Albanian syndicates evolved from whispered threats to a major force in Britain's underworld. They cut out middlemen, secured direct cartel links, and underpinned their empire with a credible threat of violence. They humiliated London's police with viral taunts, escaped crackdowns through smuggling networks, and even turned Dubai into a stage for mocking displays of immunity. Today, Britain consumes more cocaine than any other country in Europe, much of it tied to Albanian supply chains. Hundreds of arrests and multi-country raids have brought temporary wins, but new recruits arrive as fast as old leaders fall. Each police success is shadowed by a fresh humiliation, another fugitive vanishing, another gang rising, another video flaunting power. The balance remains uncertain. The syndicates adapt, the police react, and London stands caught in a struggle it has yet to control.